And welcome back to Open a Channel, Dying of Exposure's Star Trek Modern Era kind of talkback series with me, yourself, your host, Steven Kelsey, and the wonderful Sarah Gulde from Star Trek Quarterly and Women at Warp fame and everything. Welcome back, Sarah.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to talk about this week's episode.
I'm so excited. So, disclaimer first, of course, spoilers. I put this up deliberately just before the next episode so that you've had maximum time to see it. It would be super weird to watch this show specifically and not watch Discovery as it's airing. But if this is the way you're getting your Discovery, I guess welcome. That's odd, but whatever. I'm not here to judge. What we are here to judge is this episode. And Sarah, in a broader sense, what is your ruling on the third episode of season 3 of Discovery?
It's supposed to be a heartwarming episode, and I think it nails it in terms of this being the big reunion between Michael and the crew. I thought they did a great job with that.
I absolutely agree. Jonathan Frakes was sort of like a call out of, it's just like, what kind of episode will this be? Will it be a sweet, warm episode that's extremely character focused? Yes, of course it will. That is the kind of Star Trek that he loves to direct, and he directed it. So it made a lot of sense. The episode People of Earth comes as sort of the return home. Not that Earth is ever really home for Star Trek series. It's home to the Starfleet. It's definitely one of the founding planets of the Federation, but it's not really our home as audience members or ever really the home base of a show. And it is just, it brings back some changes, some surprises, some twists, some things that they did that I thought were really clever. But I'm more interested, since you are the one with considerably more Star Trek plates behind you than anyone I've ever met. I'm more interested. Okay, so give me something that you liked in this episode, something that really stood out to you in this episode, Sam.
Really setting up the tension about Michael's inner conflict, about, is she really Starfleet anymore, or is she a space pirate? Is she going to stay with Discovery, or is she going to run off with Book? And it also had like the most unbelievable thing I think we've ever seen in Star Trek, and that is the claim that these two incredibly beautiful people were together for a year and never hooked up.
There's no situation where I would be hooking up with that actor 100% of the time. The moment his shirt comes off, I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm sure there's got to be consent involved, of course, but beyond that, I would be highly distracted by that. Yeah, no.
No one's buying it.
No one's buying it. They have to. I like that they do imply that in the show, right? They're like, come on, you definitely hooked up. So one of the things that I really liked, building on that, and I think this specific moment, is the conversation between Michael and Tilly about that realization, their true reunion, of them having that conversation and doing that little like touch base check-in. This is where I'm at. This is where we're at. This is where Discovery is at. Wherever you're at, Michael, I'm here for you, kind of thing. And that kind of just real earnest friendship that they had built over the 2 seasons, and that bond just kind of coming and sweeping right back into the show, I think was fantastically done. And it really like highlights exactly what you were talking about by giving us a character that is a heart and soul character like Tilly, and being like, yeah, no, Tilly's ready to accept the fact that Michael may be different, and that's fine. And that helps the audience, I think, project a little bit into that and be like, yeah, the whole statement, like, you let go of us, didn't you? Like, you and everything. Just very emotional and super powerful.
Also gives us the best line of the episode, cake is eternal.
Cake is eternal. I don't imagine a version of Star Trek where, of Starfleet where, or humanity, where they don't have cake. I liked when it got okay. So like, I love how precious Star Trek always is with Earth. They never give you the Earth. They never they'll give you it in the past. They'll give you a piece of it. You'll get to Lower Decks jokes about it. They'll give you like a soul food Creole style restaurant set, but they will never really give you Earth, and they continued to not give it to us in this one. It's like, there it is, but again, Earth isn't actually home for this crew as we know them, and certainly wasn't going, even if it had been a whole different vibe. The conversation about all of the cousins, all of the relatives, everyone is past that kind of anxiety. Like, even if Earth had just been a welcoming thing, it wouldn't have been home. Like, for them, except for potentially Michael, depending on where they are in their journey, Discovery is it. That's home. That's everything. Right now, at least. And that is big. That is big. What else?
I did love that what they gave us of Earth this time is a tree.
Yeah, they gave us a tree.
There's a little bit of surmising about the tree, because they mentioned in TNG Boothby on Starfleet grounds had this favorite tree that Picard carved some initials into, and it's like, oh, that might be Boothby's tree.
Yeah, I think they allude to that. I do watch Ready Room, Will Wheaton's Ready Room, and I think they allude to that too, that was an important aspect. So whether or not it's exactly the same tree or just a tree, it continues that theme. They also gave us that far shot of San Francisco, basically, and everything, which is another kind of, I liked that as a sort of common trope where it's like, here's future Bay Area, just like we've shown you Bay Area in Next Gen all the time, and so that was fun.
It was also really nice that they that scene had bridge crew that we don't get to see a whole lot of. They're always just kind of there in the background, but this time they were not glorified extras.
Yeah, it's I mean, we talked about it last time, right? The more I get to learn about the people I have literally seen on the show for 2 years and have no information about in a depthy way, the better it is. They're continuing the PTSD plotline, the trauma plotline. They're continuing having that be a nice dual thing. They're continuing to give us more of it being this is a full ship. There's a full crew here. It's not these 5-6 characters, which again, like you said, is hard to do in a 13 episode series or a 12 or 10, as opposed to 22, where even if someone's minor, they could show up in a few episodes and you just kind of get familiar, or they're a regular extra in the background. And so you're just used to them. They get a line here or there and you'll be like, oh, that person. I've seen them in 15 episodes in the background versus this, where, you might have seen them in 7 and you're like, well, obviously they're important. They're on the bridge. They got to be doing something. What else did you like? What else was big?
Well, speaking of characters, we got a new one in this episode who a lot of people have been really excited to see. Adira Gray, played by Blue Del Barrio, who is a non-binary actor playing a human with a Trill symbiote.
Tell me your thoughts about the introduction of that character. To be clear, not that I know what I look like. I'm very excited about that character being in the show. I know I look like the kind of guy to be like, I don't think Star Trek needs to get into politics. I know I look like that guy. I know it. So I'm not trying to do some foolish internet nonsense. I'm super excited that they gave that representation on the show. They gave it to an actor and everything. But tell me your thoughts on that character as they introduced them and how they did it.
I love that they chose such a young actor to play the role. I loved the scene with Stamets and Adira, where you can very much see the veteran actor leading the new actor through the scene, and how much you can see how supportive he is of them in that scene, and it made my heart so happy.
I love that scene, and I think it really plays to Stamets' sort of like you're clever, but I'm wiser, and so it still kind of plays into that Stamets character of self-righteousness. and smartest person in the room, but they're recognizing it's like, no, you kid, you got spunk, you got talent, you've got potential, right? That very Stamets thing, and it was very sweet to see that. I loved that they chose like a Trill, and that they, because I mean, like, I'm on a lot of groups. There was that discussion about, like, though it wasn't the language, and I don't think it was really 100% the intent across the board all the time with the character, there absolutely are notes of that with Dax on DS9, where it's like, this is a shifting dynamic of, you're the person I knew, and they obviously play that up, especially in the first couple seasons with Dax and Cisco. And everything. It wasn't as deliberately, like, modern as this one is, which is fine, but I think it's a cool kind of send-up, because Star Trek already has had aliens with that language sort of baked into them to a degree, and so flourishing that and then taking it even further, where it's like, well, the difference here on the science biology sort of Star Trek sci-fi fantasy level is that I'm not even I'm not even Trill. I'm human. I'm carrying a symbiote in me, and so that in and of itself is a further disparity of expected identity. So it takes it that further way of, it's just like, oh, and this is something else unique about this character. So we're not just giving you, you're not able to cover up certain aspects of the character with, they've already done this trope plot line on DS9 with Dax. Like no, this is its own unique thing. And I loved it. I loved all of it. I loved it top to bottom. I thought it was a cool introduction. I love that it's a kid. I love a kid cast member. I love a young cast member in the mix for the fresh faceness. Like, Tilly sort of fills that role in the sort of, like, enthusiastic, naive, but as Tilly is coming into her own, like, having that thing, it just works for me. And so I was very excited. And what else about this episode? Because there's so much that happens. This episode is a jam-packed 45-minute episode.
I mean, this episode definitely had things to say about nationalism.
Just a few. I don't know. I don't think Star Trek really was. So science fiction never comments on the current disposition of the national zeitgeist.
Never. It's just ships with laser guns. That's all it is. It's ships
with laser guns and wide arc punching. It did. What were you like? So I loved it in the way that I love anything that sort of digs at xenophobia and digs at nationalism and everything. Was there a moment, or was there something that, like, stuck out to you of that narrative? Because that's the whole narrative of Earth. Their defense force, like, they literally might as well said, we need to put Earth first.
I think it's just after Georgiou has her Scooby-Doo moment when she unmasks the monster. Mm-hmm. And we see his face and how tired and worn he is. And it's like, oh, that is all of us right now.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is all of us right now. It really is. It's a commentary on immigration. It's a commentary on humanity being the same. It's a commentary on isolationism and xenophobia and nationalism and zero-sum gaming that exists. Like, there's an argument that Star Trek has always been a commentary on late-stage capitalism. But, yeah, and I love it. I love the actor. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but the actor that they got for that, I'm just like, oh, him, because he's been in, like, every science fiction thing on the planet. He's such a phenomenal actor, and so seeing that unmask, like, I think what I liked about this episode is that the through line of the episode was so prototypical Star Trek. Like, it was such a Star Trek episode. A commentary often is how different the modern series are, right? Like the Kurtzman modern Star Trek era series are. And this could not have been more a Star Trek episode if you put it into an AI. Like, There's people, they're fighting, a ship comes, they're not part of the fight, they try to do with it peacefully. The people don't want to listen to each other. Through Starfleet and goodness, they get them to listen to each other, and it turns out that it didn't matter if their face was white on one side and black on the other, or opposite, or if they both thought they needed this resource to live, or if this race had always been the like, it's so many episodes of Star Trek have done that exact plot, and just the simple twist of it's just like, yeah, but this is Earth. This is where Earth is after the burn. This is what happened. Starfleet left Earth because it was a danger to have them there. And now we have Earth without the guidance of basically the guidance of the Federation and the cooperativeness. And in probably what was the first in almost definitely, what would it be, like 850 years or so of a resource scarcity of any kind, because like that's the trick, right, is that Star Trek is usually a post-resource scarcity society. So if there's no concern about food, energy, shelter, healthcare, education, or any of that, why would people fight? And so that's how Earth gets post-war. But if that comes again, whether or not it's Earth or Earth and other planets nearby, it becomes that same problem. There's not enough dilithium, you're hoarding it all. They even see that when Wen mentions that they're keeping it all for the, like, it's a throwaway line in one of the over the main screen conversations, and it's absolutely like a send up. It's like, why are you doing this?
Turns out we're not so civilized after all when you take away our stuff. Our magical make everything happen items. It's shocking to me how much this episode was just right. How do you feel about this as in comparison to the first two episodes? Because a season is like an album. And especially when it's a 13, 12, 10 episode season, so it's a real short season by comparison to the long one, long running 90s, 80s and 90s era Star Trek, right? So a season's like an album. And so it's got to have different sort of like vibes episode to episode to try and like hit the different aspects of Star Trek. How do you feel about this one as compared to a couple episodes? I feel like this one was the solid radio single so far. Yeah. Is this your favorite episode so far? It's hard to define them that way, but like, did this one give you the most good feels or positive? Did it hit the most dopamine and serotonin in the back of the head?
No, actually, I think the first episode did. The first episode had, Michael on her like high as fuck scene. Sorry, I don't know if I can say that on this show.
You can. We are not approved for children.
Okay. It had your environmentalism theme. It had, the wonderful endangered species planet we end up at the end. So that one really hit all the notes for me. But 3 was a really solid episode.
It really was. I think what I liked about 3 is that I can't help but keep coming back to this. Discovery season 3 is about hope. Like, I'm gonna hit this over and over again. It has, and I'm sure there are people that will be upset about this, it has big Enterprise vibes. It has big people, like, because Enterprise is the only like Voyager had the sort of like fish out of fish out of water, completely alone in a strange new land. But the way that they played Voyager was very different. Enterprise and Discovery season 3 are very much like, we have this thing, it's awesome. With Enterprise, it's less of a formed thing. With Discovery, it's like, no, we know this works. Versus Enterprise, which is, we believe that this is the best thing that could possibly happen. Why wouldn't everyone just work together? With Discovery, they're like, no, we know it works when everyone works together. That's the better way. They've already run into multiple scenarios where it's kind of worse without there being sort of a unified cooperative of planets. And so So, but it definitely has that same vibe of it's like Discovery gets somewhere, and this one nails it. They get to Earth, and even Earth isn't part of the Federation anymore. Even Earth isn't the hub of Starfleet, and so it means they get to keep hunting for Starfleet. It means that they are truly without anchor, which I like.
That's a great place to end the episode. We're off to find the Federation.
Yeah, and then that's the season. Right? Like, I'm sure they'll find it probably before the season finale, but, like, that's the crux of the season. If I have, forgive me, because I'm going to throw actually, no, before I throw a prediction, what are your season predictions now with episode 3? I'm always going to ask this at the end, because I feel like it always changes episode to episode once you see a little bit more of the story, until you're until you're, like, episode 8, 9, and you're like, well, I know where they're going with the plot probably at that point. But what are your predictions?
I mean, really, the shining moment of season 1 was when they put their values first, and instead of blowing up Kronos, they give L'Rell power, and they put their faith in people. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what this season is going to be about.
I feel like this season is going to do everything it can to set up sort of the kind of I want them to do this. This isn't a prediction so much as I would love to see it. I don't know if it's going to happen. So Discovery has a reputation for having a sort of like fallen Federation tone, right? Like that's just sort of the vibe of it. Is that the Federation is, and certainly just Picard, same thing, right? Fallen Federation not being altruistic. And everything, which is like, again, perfectly fine with that as a tone. But I think that they're going to use it to their advantage, and I think they're going to try and set up a sort of like, we've seen that Earth isn't doing so hot with being idealistic. We see that the world in its current state is tough. We see that the Federation is scattered to the winds, but I feel like with books saying it and everything, that it's not that they're going to find this super secretive powerhouse of Federation ships. They're like ready to bring back Starfleet and the Federation in full. It's that I think that they're just going to keep stacking on the hope, like you said, the people, and it's going to realize that it's like Discovery's role is that it's going to act like a large, almost electromagnet across the galaxy of just dragging people in. It's just somebody has the energy to gather these resources together, and the ability in the case of their faster travel. And so I feel like they're going to kind of set it up and misdirect us to be like, ooh, what if the Federation has become real serious and aggressive either? And then when we find pieces of them, it's always going to be, it's like, no, these are just good people trying to do the best they can with what they have access to. And if you could just get them all on the same page and communicating with each other, then we would see significant positive impact, like this was meant to be, like it was always supposed to be. So I'm very excited for a fully hopeful season of Star Trek Discovery that's really character based, because they have the actors to do it. So it's fun to see them just let them open up every episode. Like you said, Stamets this episode, Tilly this episode, Michael.
Saru this episode.
Saru is such a badass captain. He's become such a badass captain.
I love that he is badass, but I like that he's very touchy-feely. He reaches out and he puts his hand on Michael's shoulder. She holds his hand as they're having their conversation, and it's so warm and charming.
He is the warmest captain that they've had, I think. Yeah, I'd say warmest. He's the most empathetic captain. He's and like that works for his character history, but it's also, I just think, something that like we want in the time, right? We had an awesome cowboy Captain Kirk, and then a grumpy dad Captain Picard, and then we had my favorite commander / captain, Sisko, who is Avery Brooks is just a gift to a scene every time because he's at 11 out of 11 when he says his son's name, and then everything else is higher than that. He hits that K on Jake so well. And then I love Kate Mulgrew as Janeway is just a beast. She's like the perfect combo of all of the things that needed to happen for a captain of Voyager, and I love her. She's absolutely I'm like this is what a Starfleet captain actually should be like. This is what they should be like. Kind of hard when they need to be, reasonable, thoughtful, smart, not afraid to get their hands dirty, but like trying to avoid that if they can. This is what this should be. And so having the and then Archer, of course, was a Boy Scout, a giant Eagle Scout. And like that was fine, but it was real hard to do on how they were shooting that show. It took a while for that to like land right. I love Archer, but I was like, never has there ever been a guy who's just absolutely a D&D lawful good alignment character. But nonetheless, Saru, just top shelf captaining. It's great to see Doug Jones get to play a command role in that level, and also kind of get to play to his age and experience as an actor, because him and I think he and Michelle Yeoh are like the two most long-running actors on that series.
Mm-hmm.
And getting to see him with, obviously Anthony Rapp and other actors have come to it with a lot of history behind them, but a lot of those actors are fairly young, and they haven't had big roles, and they certainly weren't on shows like where there were, if you talk about internationally, tens of millions of eyes on them every week. Seeing if they act right. So it's nice to see him be able to express that, because Doug Jones as an actor is a very warm guy. So
I mean, just as a person, he's a warm guy.
As a human. Yeah, he's the best addition to Star Trek in a long time, as far as do I feel like I fit in with this vibe of fandom? And the answer is yes, you absolutely do, Doug Jones. Never leave Star Trek. I mean, continue to do horror and weird, crazy Oscar-level films, but also keep doing Star Trek.
And Michelle Yeoh definitely had moments in this episode. She's definitely giving off Mama Hen vibes.
Yeah.
Concerning Michael.
She's very worried about what's been happening with her over the year. Well, also, I mean, again, Michael's the only reason that that she's there, honestly. And so that relationship is much more important than the character verbalizes, right? But it's absolutely, Michael has all these reasons that she made this choice, and now even more reasons to just exist in this future that have nothing to do with Discovery. And she's just not, it's not an equal relationship playing field. And so that'll be interesting to see.
Yeah. Oh, and also I really liked that they didn't bog us down with this big conflict between Michael and Saru deciding who's going to be captain.
No.
It's nope, you're going to do it.
It's you. It's you.
That would not have been fun.
It wouldn't have been. No one wants to see that. That's not what this season is about. This season isn't about the conflict. I love the discussion, and it is accurate. The different showrunners have had very different visions for how they wanted the crew to interact in this series, and I'm very happy with where they landed on. Which is, it's I am 100% fine watching a high conflict crew series, but I am also 100% fine watching friendship and bonding and trust and empathy win the day. I'm also fine with that. So I think that I was really happy to watch a sort of a gritty Discovery in season 1. And Oscar Isaacs is no, not Oscar Isaacs. The actor that played Lorca, whose name
Jason Isaacs.
Jason Isaacs. I'm like, Oscar Isaacs is a completely different universe of actor. Jason Isaacs as Lorca is hands down one of my favorite Star Trek characters in history. He played an amazing villain through the whole thing, and I thought it was great, and I loved that plot. And I liked season 2. But I think that season 2 was sort of this nice, perfect transition to get that crew to sort of where they need to be in season 3. And now we get to see them all be friends and bond and really care about each other. And also, yeah, if you're going to have Michael be like, I kind of let Discovery go and I was gone, it would have been the worst writing in the world to have her be like, but maybe I should be captain of the ship that I let go. Like, that would have been just miserable, weird conflict for no point. Saru's already proven himself as a captain. I want there to be a solid 7 seasons so that when I see future fan art where all the captains are with each other and everything like that, that I get to see him in the mix. Just like eventually we'll see Anson Mount's Pike in as one of the captains. But yeah, it's so good. Is there any other final thoughts that you have? Like other than just reinforcing how just truly just warm this episode was.
Other favorite line from the episode is when Tilly is like, maybe we can give her some of your magic mushrooms, and Stamets is like, who are you?
Who are you? I'm happy they gave like that was one of the joys, was this sort of like, here's Tilly, we're gonna put Tilly with Stamets. Stamets is going to hate Tilly. Tilly is gonna desperately be frustrated with Stamets, but sure that she can impress him eventually with her knowledge. And I like when they touch on that again, because that was a real fun dynamic, and all of the actors have good character rapport with each other. Everybody just feels very comfortable. But yeah, I guess that's it. I guess that's it for this episode. We have next week, which, as of the uploading of this podcast, will literally be tomorrow. So I'm very excited for more Discovery as it comes. I mean, CBS All Access really did us a nice quarantine favor by being like, we're just going to do Lower Decks and Discovery straight, no breaks. You're just going to get a Star Trek episode, a new Star Trek episode, like once every week for a solid 20 plus weeks.
23 weeks.
23 weeks, like almost the season of television, a season of good old fashioned Star Trek. 23. Without a winter break and a spring break and a mid-fall break and a weird holiday schedule that moves episodes around constantly. Where can people follow you if they are just listening to this in another tab on YouTube and not looking at the overlay that clearly shows that?
So I post a lot of Star Trek stuff on Twitter. I'm at Sarah Miyoko, Sarah, M as in Mary, Iyoko, and you can find my fanzine Star Trek Quarterly on Facebook.
And I am on everything at Dying of Exposure, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and then of course for like Twitch and Instagram, you can also check up at dying_of_exposure, which is the accounts that I have to create when Dying of Exposure is not allowed, because it has the phrase dying in it. And also, I didn't know quarantine was going to have... I didn't know we'd have a pandemic in 2020 when I invented this very clever name. So follow us there. We'll be back with another episode next week. And thank you very much again, Sarah, for taking some time to talk to me today.
Oh, thanks for having me again.
Okay, well, see you all later, and until next week, let's hope that they don't keep finding classic alien races that have shut down from all cooperation again.
Bye, everyone.